So here I am again. I like this route. It's Figra. However, I'm not just going to spend the whole time talking about how wonderful Figra is and talking about donkeys, as normally my Figra videos feature donkeys. I thought I might just give some information and help for those who are thinking about taking up this sport of motorcycling in Saudi Arabia. Just get around this curve first. Information about how to become a motorcyclist in Saudi Arabia. Now, you might already be a motorcyclist, you might be an expat and you've got a license in your country, or you might be someone who's never rode a motorcycle before. So if you've not rode before, and if you've rode before, the start of the procedure is the same. You go to the driving school, which in my case in Jeddah was a place called Dalla. And at Dalla you start the forms. There'll be people waiting outside the driving school to help with the forms, but in reality you don't really need them because the people inside the office are friendly and helpful enough. So you go and fill in these forms, and the first thing they'll want to do is get your fingerprints. I suppose they keep fingerprints of motorcyclists on file in case you die. I don't know, but they have to get your fingerprints to keep them on file. Don't want to put anyone off motorcycling, but let's say you come off your bike and you have a horrible death. Having your fingerprints will help them identify you, right? Unless if you didn't wear gloves, then your fingerprints will be gone too, because they'll probably be robbed off when you're sliding down the road. But anyway, that's to get your fingerprints in your criminal report. That takes 2 weeks to arrive. So you'll make your first step, and then you have to wait 2 weeks. Now during that time, in that 2 weeks, you can carry on with the other step, which is a prerequisite, which is the medical. You have to make sure you go to a clinic which has a registration with the traffic department. Not all of them do, but if you go to one that doesn't have registration with the traffic department, they'll put you in the right direction where you can go. And so the medical is basically just eyesight test and a blood test. Funny thing is, if you've done this before, if you have a car license, they will still require you to do another one. I thought it was funny because I recently renewed my driving license for the car, and they'd taken my blood, so my blood isn't going to change. It's still A positive, but yeah, they had to take more blood to do the motorcycle license. So yeah, you do the medical, goes on the system, done. 2 weeks later, or however long it takes, you come back, and they might tell you come back tomorrow. Well, whatever, you come back, and then that's when either, this is where the process gets different, either they'll get you to do the test straight away if you have an existing license, and there's a system to translate licenses in the driving school, especially if you have a license from a Western country. So I have a license from the UK. Technically I don't, because our licenses in the UK say you are permitted to ride like a 20cc tricycle, but that is a code and it's next to a picture of a motorcycle. So when you get your license translated, they just assume that it's a motorcycle license. Whether that's a good thing or not, I don't know. But that's what I did. So if you have a license already, you'll translate it in the driving school, and if you don't, that's when they'll have you do some lessons. A lot of theory lessons and whatnot, but yeah, you'll have to do some lessons. So after doing those lessons, however many hours they are, then you'll come to the next stage of doing the test. And I must say, now I went through that loophole, but I still did lessons, and for me, I actually paid 2 people for lessons. I paid one guy in Saudi Arabian money 500 riyals for 5 lessons. Unfortunately, I don't know, he travelled after the first lesson. Then he asked his friend to give me a lesson instead. I went to where his friend works, but his friend obviously had some sort of very demanding job which didn't end, and I never got a lesson from him. So yeah, that was a failure. And then in the end, after I had the lessons with someone else, I came back to have my final lesson, just to kind of get my money's worth more than anything, and also to have experience with a different bike. But the lessons I really enjoyed was the ones from Harley Davidson. If you buy a Harley Davidson, whether you can ride or can't ride, they will give you lessons. And even if you've been riding, especially if you've been riding in Saudi Arabia for some time, it's good to take them up on their lessons, because they'll teach you things to do with safety, which perhaps other people won't teach you, like slow maneuvers, emergency stopping, slow rides, that sort of thing, which for filtering through traffic. Really good stuff. It's a bit expensive. I think I paid 1,500 or 2,000 riyals, I can't remember now. But even though it's expensive, if you are buying a Harley, like I said, if you buy a Harley, they're going to give you these lessons. If you haven't bought a Harley yet, when you buy a Harley, if you're planning to buy one, they'll refund that money off the price of your bike. So that's good. So anyway, you go and have the test. And the test is literally get on the bike, ride a figure of 8, and go put the bike back. And in my case, the instructor, I don't think he even looked at me. He sat in a car and didn't look. I've forgotten one more important point. To get to this stage of having the test, you also, and to get your license actually, you also need to have a helmet. So they don't really care about you showing them a helmet, really. When I went to do my license, I was told you must bring the helmet with you, but really they just want to see the receipt. So you need a receipt for a helmet. And another important point is, and this happened to me when I was registering this bike here after importing it, if you've got I've got now a Simpson helmet, I spent a reasonable amount of money on it in the UK, and I have a receipt. They don't care about that receipt. They want to have a receipt from this country, so I just got a receipt for 100 Riyal helmet, which I would never wear a 100 Riyal helmet for safety reasons, but hey, they want a receipt, I gave them a receipt. So you need a receipt for a helmet, or maybe you'll have to bring a helmet and you do a test. Really, they just care that you can do a figure of 8 without dropping the bike, and maybe without stalling. And that's what I was worried about, believe it or not, because imagine you've done training on Harley Davidson where you don't even need to use throttle to get it moving because it's got so much torque, and then you go to the driving school and they've got these 150cc Hondas, and yeah, you do need throttle. You can't just rely on clutch to get it moving. So I was really concerned about stalling the bike, to be honest. So I didn't take it out of first gear. I did the whole thing in first gear and gave it lots of revs, and that worked. Didn't stall the bike, and that's it, done. Then you just put your papers into one office window there, and you collect your license like the next day or the day after, or whatever, or at the end of the day, sorry, and then you're done. Just because you have a motorcycle license in Saudi Arabia doesn't mean that you are ready to ride. Especially if, like that figure 8, you don't even need to be that skillful in slow maneuvers to be able to do it. And that reminds me of one guy, when I did my training with Harley Davidson, there was a guy who was also doing training, and he'd been riding for some time, but he just bought a Harley Davidson motorcycle, and what he found was he couldn't maneuver it slowly, and he was doing a U-turn, and there are U-turns on the main roads here in Saudi, quite a few of them, and he's doing a U-turn and he finds himself just driving into the traffic. So because he couldn't do the slow maneuvers. So you need to be able to do slow maneuvers, really, to do U-turns, and just for your safety. It's very important. So yeah, even if you got the license, if you didn't do some training, do some training. If you can't afford training, or you don't want to, or it's not available, you can always watch YouTube videos and then set some cones out in your in a car park, whatever. Or if you haven't got cones, just use the lines that are there from the car park spaces, and just train yourself how to turn around in a circle, how to do a slalom, use the dotted lines on the road and weave. Do an emergency stop, very important. Moving slowly through traffic. Don't do it through traffic, practice in the car park. All those things really important so that you can just be safe on the road. Now for me, I got my license and then I bought a bike, and I just practiced around my area for a while. And then even then, I went and took it for my first time on the highway. It was terrifying. And there are many factors which you don't consider, and you feel like you're out of control because of the feel like you're out of control because every time you pass by a truck, like, the wind wobbles you. And I don't notice that anymore, but when I was new, I definitely noticed that the wind was wobbling me. So yeah, going on a highway for the first time is terrifying. But so, first time you go on a highway, don't do it straight away. Practice in the little roads around your house. Then once you get comfortable, get on the highway, do one exit. Get up to something of a motorway speed, not full motorway speed. After you've done one exit the next day, or a few hours, whatever, after a break, do 2 exits, do 3, until you can competently, 2 cars, it's going to overtake, yeah, until you can competently go on the motorway. And then don't stop practicing. Buying a bike. By the way, if you have a car, what's he doing on that side of the road? If you have a car, you can only own, as a non-Saudi, in Saudi Arabia, you can only own 2 vehicles on your name. And a vehicle is a vehicle, so if you have a car and another car, you can only, that's it, you can't have a bike. If you have a car, you can have a bike. If you have no cars, you can have 2 bikes. If you have a wife with a driving license, you can register the cars on her name and have 2 bikes. But yeah, so that's another consideration. Don't go get a motorcycle license while you got 2 cars registered in your name, thinking you'll be able to buy a bike, and then get to the shop and realise, no, you can't buy that bike. What bike to buy? As a beginner in Saudi Arabia? Well, I think it depends a lot on what type of riding you're going to do, and that's the main issue, is discovering what type of riding you want to be doing. I thought that I would like to be cruising, and I'll cruise a bike when I first got my bike. In the end, here I am on a sports tourer, because I fancied going further distances and being comfortable. When I first saw a bike like this, I thought it was ugly, to be honest. And when I first saw them, then after I got used to them, this is the type of bike I like. So you want to get to know what bikes you like, and you can do that using second-hand bikes is a good idea, rather than buying new and then realizing, oh, I don't like this type of bike. This resort here, I think, yeah, stayed here once with the biker group, actually. Oh, a lot of pebbles on the road. Where to stop, where to stop. It's also a nice spot because it's got trees. So the only problem here is the trash. Yes, I'm British, but use the word trash. Ah, donkeys! Okay. And the donkeys. I don't mind the donkeys. It's the trash I mind. Anyway. Right, donkey?